This is continuing courtroom coverage in the trial of James Crumbley from the Hidden Killers podcast from True Crime Today. Now, back to the courtroom.
So according to your testimony, this would be about 4 hours after he was charged with 4 homicide offenses?
That's correct.
Your Honor, I would object to that question. Mr. Keast indicated that James Crumbley was charged with homicide offenses.
This is a homicide.
I think we've been clear that this is an involuntary manslaughter case, Your Honor.
It's a homicide.
It goes by both names. The title of the charge is homicide involuntary manslaughter.
Right.
You're both right.
Sir? Yeah, please.
So that was at 4:17. At 4 o'clock was the time that the judge had ordered the defendant and his wife to turn themselves in.
Okay, so when it became clear that they hadn't turned themselves in, was their license plate made public?
Yes, it was.
Was the license plate on the front or the back of the vehicle?
In Michigan, we only require the license plate on the rear of the vehicle. I've worked fugitive investigations. Oftentimes, fugitives will back into a spot to attempt to hide their license plate, and also it's easier to get away if necessary.
Okay. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but there were no arrangements to have a surrender with this defendant or his wife. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So at the time this occurred, there was no plan with law enforcement to turn himself in?
No, sir.
And in fact, someone with a valid felony arrest warrant, they don't get to choose when they get to turn themselves in, do they?
Absolutely not.
Now, sir, I want to go back to November the 30th, 2021. In the afternoon, you had already assumed investigative command. Would that be right while you were on scene?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you said you met with Special Agent Brandon while on scene at the high school?
I did.
Okay, and what did you task him with?
I tasked him with tracing, frankly, he offered. He came to me and said, do you know who the registered owner of the gun was? And at the time, I did not. He testified earlier, and you heard that it was secured in a garbage can. One of our officers, upon the arrest of the shooter, pulled out the garbage bag portion of it and took just the plastic waste bin and put the gun to keep it all centrally located because searches were still going on and whatever. That officer turned it over to me. I took my post in the front office there. I sat it next to me. At some point during the day, Special Agent Brandon came to me and said, hey, have you identified the owner of this weapon yet? And I had not. So he's like, I'm the ATF. Sounded like a really good idea to have him track this down, and he got right on it.
Okay, and was that information relayed back to you fairly quickly?
It was.
And did you learn that that murder weapon was in fact purchased November the 26th, 2021?
Yes.
Now, you learned the identity of the shooter while you were still at the high school, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And you mentioned earlier that you had tasked Lieutenant Marsban with securing the family home and securing a search warrant.
Yes.
Okay. Now, at that time, did you know if there were any other casualties outside of the school?
We did not. Like I said, I've gotten some information from area hospitals that some wounded were coming in. So at that point, we're like, well, there's several hospitals in the general facility, so we had to assign officers out to different hospitals to make sure that we could locate and identify any potential victims.
Okay, so when you sent officers there, they didn't know what to find, what to expect?
No clue.
All right. Now, at some point, was there a concern about explosives in the school?
Yeah, so as I was stating earlier, I was getting sent and others were getting sent and observed Twitter, now X posts, Instagram posts, YouTube videos, And we had came across a YouTube video of the defendant's son making a secondary explosive device, potentially more commonly known as a Molotov cocktail, and detonating it. We, at the time, and we'll talk, I guess, about the journal, we found some information in the journal that suggests that there may be secondary devices in place within the school. That prolonged my ability to go and investigate the scene of the crime because we had to continually sweep to make sure the area was completely safe.
Okay, and in fact, did you have to call in a specialized unit to handle that?
We did. Yes, Captain Hill. He activated the Michigan State bomb squad with their bomb dogs, and they came in with their robot.
Now, were you able to determine what area, what room or area of the school specifically the shooter left right before he began shooting?
Yes, it was the bathroom adjacent to room 258.
Okay, I'm going to show you what's been admitted as people 16. What are we looking at here?
This is the backpack and contents that the shooter was seen, observed wearing, walking into the bathroom prior to the shooting beginning.
Okay. Now, was this photograph taken after the location was made safe by the bomb squad?
That's correct.
Okay. And they didn't find any explosive devices?
They did not.
Okay. Now, what do you see in this picture? What was seized as evidence?
The most obvious thing is you see the book open, that is the shooter's journal.
Okay. Did you have the opportunity to review that journal?
I did. I have.
All right. Were you able to identify it as being written by the shooter?
Yes, sir.
How were you able to make that identification?
First of all, his name's in it. That was the most glaring way to identify that it was his. His writing is unique, and it matched some homework and other writings that we saw. There's references to several incidents that occurred in the school within the month of November, things of that nature.
Okay, so from the content of the journal itself, you're able to put a time frame on when the journal was likely written?
Yes, sir.
And tell me about that.
The first date written would have been November 9th. But it did reference incidents that happened before that.
Okay, in the month of November?
In the month of November,
okay.
Yes.
As well as incidents that happened after that in the month of November?
Yes, sir.
Okay. How many pages of writing are contained in that journal?
22.
Okay. So is it filled with writing from front to back, or is it at different parts, or how is it organized?
No, it actually appears to be written from back to front, and it stops about a quarter way through.
Okay. Now, of the 22 pages, is there, I guess, a title page or something to signify the end of the journal, end of the writing?
Yes. I mean,
okay.
To answer your question simply, yes.
So out of the pages with writing in that journal, how many contain reference to the school shooting?
All 22.
Now, for the record, I'm going to show you some of these slides, or some of these passages, rather, from the journal, and I'm going to refer to them by page number, and just so you're clear, sir, they're indicated page 1 from where the writing starts to page 22, which would be the back binding of that journal. Is that accurate?
Understood, yes.
Okay. Now, is the journal in written format, or were drawings contained as well?
Both.
Okay. Were there any passages in this journal that you noted indicative of the shooter's request for mental health help?
Yes.
This is People's 359. Can you read what's written in this passage, please?
Yes. I have zero help, and help is bolded, for my mental problems, and it's causing me to shoot up the fucking school.
This is page 5. For the record, that was page 6 on the journal. Same exhibit, page 5. Could you read that, please?
Yes. I want help, but my parents don't listen to me, so I can't get any help.
Okay. That's page 5. This is page 19. What does this say?
My parents won't listen to me about help or a therapist.
All right. Now, were there any journal entries about the shooter's desire to obtain a 9mm handgun?
Yes, sir.
Same exhibit, page 3. Can you tell us what this is, please?
Yes. The shooter writes, so we should be bound to get my SD 9VE soon.
Okay. Now, that specific term, SD9VE, did you see that anywhere else in this case?
Yes, I did.
This is People's 85 and 86. What do we see here?
This is a picture of a Smith & Wesson model number SD9VE that was for sale, that was extracted from the defendant's phone.
Okay. And Mr. Rogowski testified this was from Monday, November the 8th, sent from the defendant's son to the defendant in a message that was deleted. You were here for that testimony?
Yes, I was.
Now back to the journal. This is page 22. Can you please read us what this says?
Yes. The shooter writes, I want to shoot up the fucking school so badly. Soon, I am going to buy a 9mm pistol.
Same exhibit, page 17. Go ahead.
All I need is my 9mm pistol, which I am currently begging my dad for.
And page 22. This is the binding, right?
The binding, correct.
Okay, go ahead.
I will have to find where my dad hid my 9mm before I can shoot the school.
Okay. And page 15.
Unfortunately, my dad does not want me to get the 9mm gun, and we are having financial problems, RN for right now. And I don't have a job, so now I'm pissed because I want to do the shooting with a 9mm pistol, as they are effective for killing. But RN right now, all I got is a puny 22 LR Kel-Tec that I don't know where my dad hid it.
Okay, and we heard evidence in this case that James Crumbley obtained a 22 caliber Kel-Tec pistol in June of 2021. Is that right?
That is right. Yep.
Were there journal entries regarding the shooter's plan?
Yes.
Okay. Here's page 3, same exhibit. Can you read this, please?
I'm about to shoot up the school and spend the rest of my life in prison.
Sir, did you find any journal entries regarding the shooter's access to the 9mm?
Yes, I did.
Same exhibit. This is also page 3. Go ahead.
Excuse me. First off, I got my gun. It's a SP 2022 6-hour 9mm. Second, the shooting is tomorrow. I have access to the gun and the ammo. I am fully committed to now. So yeah, I'm going to prison for life, and many people have about 1 day left to live.
Now, sir, we saw one of the journal entries that had the word help all bold that was across a couple of lines. Were there any other writings or passages in that bolded format?
Yes, there were, sir.
Were there pictures in the journal as well?
Yes, there were.
Okay, like what?
There's a picture of what appears to be an arm fully extended out with a gun pointed to the back of what appears to be a female's head.
Okay. And was that a little picture or a large picture in it?
It took up about that much of the page.
Okay, so to reference...
Oh, I'm sorry, about 3-4 inches of the page.
Now, was this journal a full-size book like this legal notepad, or was it smaller?
It was small. Far side.
Just going to mark this for a demonstrative exhibit. This will be 381. This is a demonstrative exhibit. Papers with it?
Any objections?
No, Your Honor, just for demonstrative purposes.
Sure. Put a pair of gloves and just take that off so you can see it. Can you just hold it up for the jury so they can see, please? And thank you, sir. And that's what's depicted here in People 16 that we're referring to?
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
If this was laid open.
Yeah, first one.
Sure.
Would you mind putting it back in? Sir, we've heard evidence and we've heard the 911 call that James Crumbley made on Tuesday, November 30th at 1:34 p.m. You're aware of that call?
Yes, sir.
And you were in court when it was played?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, we've also heard testimony that the Myre and Ray Road next to the high school was the emergency location for Oxford High School parents in case of emergency at the high school.
The reallocation point, yeah.
Yes. And did the police likewise notify the community of that as well?
Yes, they did.
Okay. Do you recall when that occurred?
I believe the first 911 call that the sheriff's office dispatch advised that the Myre will be the relocation point was at approximately 1 o'clock. 1 o'clock that day.
Okay.
So just 10 minutes or so after the shooting.
Okay, so the shooting began at 12:51 p.m. This was 1 p.m. the same day?
Yes, sir.
Right. Are you aware how many 911 calls were placed to dispatch in that time period?
Yeah.
Objection, Your Honor, relevance.
How is it relevant?
He's going to testify as to who identified their son as the shooter, Judge.
Okay, but that's not relevant to how many 911 existing, but that's not relevant.
How many people identified their son as the shooter?
Just one.
Okay. Nobody else?
Nobody else.
Was there more than one 911 call?
There was.
Oh, I'm sorry, maybe that is relevant. How many 911 calls is it relevant? But I guess out of those, how many?
It gives the answer context, Judge.
Okay.
How many 911 calls were placed at that day?
112 were able to be answered within the immediacy of the shooting.
Okay, and out of those 112, how many identified their son as the suspect?
Just one, the defendant.
Thank you. Okay, sir, as the officer in charge, you've reviewed the surveillance video of Oxford High School.
Yes, I have.
Okay. We're going to play that now. Judge, could you please instruct the media not to film?
Can you remind me how long it is? I just want to decide whether or not the jury's going to break first or after.
It's just a few minutes, Judge.
Okay, I think it was maybe one. Okay.
It might be a good idea to take a break after.
Okay. Can you not videotape the video that we're about to play? And I also went over any victims or victims' family in the courtroom that we're about to play the video.
Your Honor, I am objecting for the reasons previously stated.
I understand.
May I proceed, Judge?
Sure.
Just so we understand the date and time, we have a time stamp and date stamp at the bottom here. November 30th, 2021. This is at 12:46 p.m., is that right?
That's right.
Okay, I'm going to...
And prosecutor, it's correct, there's no audio.
Correct, there's no audio. Let me know, please, when you recognize the shooter in this frame.
He just walked out and made a left. You'll be able to see him more clearly momentarily. He's about to enter right now.
Okay, the individual turning into the bathroom there is the defendant's son?
That is the defendant's son, yes.
Okay, so for the record, this is 12:46 p.m.?
Correct.
And this video it skips with time delay, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, this is 12:51 p.m.?
Yes, sir.
Okay. We have a break, Jeff.
Yes, Lieutenant, you can step down, but you may not discuss your testimony with someone. All right, you can step down. We have about a 10-minute break. All right.
All rise for the jury.
Be seated and please remain seated while the defendant is removed.
Please.
All rise.
Are you ready for the hearing?
Yes, Your Honor.
All rise for the jury.
All right, you may be seated. Lieutenant, you are still under oath,
Yes,
right?
Your Honor.
Go ahead, Mr. Keast.
Thank you. Lieutenant Willis, the video we just saw had some split screens in that. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so just so we're clear, that was Mr. Bobrowski testified to nearly 100 surveillance cameras, and he spliced the video together.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so that was just it was depicting the same time, but just different angles of the same hallway.
That's correct.
Okay. Sir, could you tell us, please, who was wounded on November the 30th?
The wounded was Phoebe Arthur, Elijah Mueller, Riley Franz, Callie Osage, Molly Darnell, John Asciuto, and Aiden Watson.
Thank you. May I approach the witness?
Sure.
This is admitted as People's 1. Sir, what have I handed you?
This is the autopsy protocol for Hana St. Juliana.
Okay, sir, who was killed November the 30th, 2021?
That's correct.
This is Exhibit 5. Sir, how old was Hana?
She was 14.
And how did she die?
Your Honor, I'm going to object to the reading of the autopsy protocol into the record.
He's not
It's been
reading.
admitted.
He's not reading the autopsy protocol.
They're admitted as exhibits 1 through 4, correct?
That's correct, Judge.
All right, so I think it was a question.
How did she die?
She died of multiple gunshot wounds.
May I approach the witness?
Sure.
This is Exhibit 2. What is that?
This is the autopsy protocol for Madisyn Baldwin.
And this is a picture of Madisyn and People 6 on the screen.
Yes.
How did she die, sir?
She had a gunshot wound to the head.
She was 17 years old.
Yes, sir.
This is Exhibit 3. So what have I handed you?
Autopsy protocol for Tate Myre,
Okay.
and he was 16 years old.
And how did he die?
He died from multiple gunshot wounds.
And this is Exhibit 4. That's an autopsy protocol?
Yes, sir. This is for Justin Shilling. He was 17 years old.
And how did he die, sir?
Died of a gunshot wound to the head.
And those are the 4 students who were killed inside Oxford High School on November the 30th, 2021?
That's correct.
I have nothing further. Thank you.
Cross.
Yes, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Detective Goodman.
Good afternoon.
We go back to November 30th of 2021 when you were made aware of the shooting at Oxford High School.
Okay.
You testified today that you were at the prosecutor's office
That was.
and you were advised, you said by the prosecutor and her chief assistant, that was the chief prosecutor, Ms. McDonald,
Correct.
and her chief assistant came to the office where you were discussing another case.
We were in a conference room in their office, and they came. Yes.
The prosecutor asked you about these swear-tos that were conducted both for the charges made against him and the charges alleged against his son as well, the charge made against his son. Do you recall those questions?
I do.
And the prosecutor confirmed with you that the process for the swear-to is open to the public.
That's correct.
You said that both the public and the media were present at the swear-tos for both Mr. Crumbley's son and also Mr. Crumbley.
That's right.
For Mr. Crumbley's son, you made note that Mr. Crumbley was not present in person for the swear-to in the arraignment.
Yes, I stated he was he was there on Zoom.
And if you recall, his son was also on Zoom for the arraignment. Is that correct?
His son was in custody.
Okay.
Yeah,
But he was not there in person in custody, if you recall.
that's correct.
After the Oxford High School shooting on November 30th of 2021, do you recall receiving tips and receiving information and were made aware of concerns for the safety of James and Jennifer Crumbley after their son's name had been made public, if you recall?
I don't recall that.
Do you recall that their residence had been identified publicly?
I don't recall it, but if I can explain, I think I do know that there was media was there, but I don't recall it being released anywhere, if that makes sense.
And I'm not suggesting that law enforcement released that location. Obviously, you talked about the social media posts,
Yes.
that there was a lot of information coming into you and your department There was a lot of information being made public that wasn't necessarily true. There was a lot going on at the time on November 30th of 2021, separate from the tragedy at the school.
That's fair.
You said that on December 2nd of 2021, that you and the prosecutor's office were having discussions about possibly charging James and Jennifer Crumbley.
That's correct.
You know that at some point on December 2nd of 2021, not necessarily the nature of not the content of the discussions, but the nature of the discussions about potentially charging was made public.
I'm not familiar with that.
If you recall, there were media reports and information put out into the media that James and Jennifer may be facing charges.
That may be true. At that point, I was completely involved. Like, there was things that came out in the media that people tell me about today I have no idea about, because I wasn't.
Yes, and you had a lot going on. And obviously when I ask you a question, I'm just asking you questions about what you know about.
I understand.
You knew on December 2nd, you testified today that you knew on December 2nd of 2021 that James and Jennifer Crumbley were not staying at their residence.
Yes.
You knew that they'd left on November 30th of 2021.
Correct.
And that was before charges had been announced against them?
Yes.
And before there was any sort of information that may have been put into the media that charges may be forthcoming?
Yes.
That was in fact the day of the actual Oxford High School shooting that they stopped staying at their residence.
To my understanding, yes.
The prosecutor showed you Exhibit 362, which is a Holiday Inn Express receipt, correct?
Yes.
And if you recall, the room was registered to Jennifer Crumbley.
I believe you.
If you recall.
I don't recall, but I believe you.
You know that at some point on December 1st, James and Jennifer left. Oh, and before I go past that, you also know that on November 30th that James and Jennifer Crumbley obtained those track phones from the Walmart in Lapeer.
Yes.
And we looked at that receipt as well.
Yes.
And you testified that you learned during your investigation that there was a conversation either with Detective Sergeant Brian or Lieutenant Marsden about James and Jennifer obtaining those phones.
Yes.
And the purpose was because they had given their phones to law enforcement and they didn't have any way to communicate with people, if you recall the information they were given.
They were taken in a search warrant. Whether they gave them to, I guess, is subjective. But yeah, we obtained them, and it's my understanding the advice given to them, which again isn't uncommon, is that purchase some track phones so you could maintain communications.
Exhibit 365, you know that on December 1st of 2021 that James and Jennifer left that Holiday Inn in Lapeer and checked into an extended stay in Auburn Hills.
What day did you say?
December 1st of 2021.
Yes.
Now Lapeer, for those who aren't familiar, is north of Oxford.
It is.
It's north of Auburn Hills.
It is.
So they left the Lapeer area and came down to Auburn Hills, which is 15 minutes south of Oxford. I could be wrong about the time.
But you referenced Lapeer essentially borders Oxford.
Okay.
And
on the north
side, and then you got Rochester. 20 minutes. I don't know.
Okay, I won't lock you into a time. But they came, and they came slightly south of, still in Oakland County, correct?
Yes.
Okay. You noted specifically that there was an Auburn Hills Police Department across the street from the extended stay.
Yes.
Now, you know that Jennifer and James Crumbley checked out of the extended stay on December 3rd of 2021.
Yes.
Which was that Friday.
Yes.
You don't know what time they left the hotel, correct?
If the checkout's on the... But do I know? No.
You know what time checkout is?
Yes.
Based on the receipt and the documents, correct?
Yes.
But you don't know what time they left? Whether if it was at checkout or before, you have no idea.
That's right.
At some point on Exhibit 368 is the T-Mobile receipts from the T-Mobile in Owasso.
Okay.
Those are dated December 2nd of 2021.
Okay.
If you recall.
Yes, I do.
And there was some conversation about the distance that Owasso is from Auburn Hills, because on December 2nd of 2021, James and Jennifer Crumbley had been staying at the extended stay in Auburn Hills.
Yes, and I believe they went to Owasso to get their phones.
Right. They drove to Owasso to get their phones and then went back to the extended stay, from what you understand.
Yes.
So they didn't stay in Owasso, correct? Overnight, to your knowledge?
No.
Okay. Now, you are aware that after the Oxford High School shooting, there were a variety of reactions and emotions to what occurred at Oxford High School.
Yes.
There was terror.
From whom?
Anyone at the school.
More than likely.
There was anger.
Are you
I'm
just
speaking
talking
in general. In general.
I would guess after an incident like that, every emotion imaginable could be
Right.
put out there.
You're aware that once the identity of the shooter at Oxford High School was made public, you were also made aware during your investigation that a lot of that anger, or some of that anger, was directed toward the parents of the shooter, James and Jennifer Crumbley.
I can't say specifically, no.
Exhibits 371 and 372 were the videos from 1111 Bellevue in Detroit. You noted that there was a difference of 22 minutes on the timestamp on the video from the actual time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So the video was 22 minutes ahead of what the actual clock time was, if you recall.
I think that's right.
Okay. The video, I believe it's 371, shows that James and Jennifer arrived at approximately 10:59 a.m. at 1111 Bellevue.
Okay.
And that was prior to the swear-to that you testified was conducted at noon.
I believe it was around noon, correct?
Okay. And again, I'm not asking you to lock in on the exact time if it was 12:01 or 12:02 or whatever the time may be, but 10:59 is obviously before around noon.
It is.
And the two videos that you were shown, the Exhibit 372 is after 4 p.m., where it shows that James Crumbley walked out of the building and turned the car around and then went back in the building.
Yes. Was it 417 or something like that? 416?
Correct. So the two clips that you saw, there were actually many, many clips from throughout that day, if you recall, that you've reviewed as part of your investigation.
Yes.
In fact, as part of your investigation, you reviewed those clips and know that one or both of James and or Jennifer Crumbley were in and out of that building on more than one occasion on December 3rd of 2021.
I don't recall.
Do you recall that there was video of James specifically leaving the building to smoke and going back in on more than one time?
I can't say. I don't know.
And we heard, you were in here when Investigator Creer testified.
Yes.
And he talked about finding, I believe he said 14 cigarette butts next to the Kia.
Yes.
In the 1111 Bellevue parking lot.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So you don't specifically recall whether or not James and Jennifer did leave the building. You don't recall whether they didn't. It's fair to say you just don't recall.
That's right.
You testified that at 4 o'clock, a judge ordered James and his wife to turn themselves in.
Yes.
You don't know whether James had knowledge of that order from the judge.
I mean, it's safe. I mean, There's some evidence in my mind that points to that he's aware.
You did not see anything in your review of the case and of the evidence that you've obtained in this case to suggest that James was not going to turn himself in. And I'm not asking about anything that you've seen that you may or may not be able to talk about, but I'm asking specifically, you haven't seen anything to suggest that they weren't going to turn
She'll
themselves
have
in.
to object to the form of the question. She can't try to pigeonhole a witness if he has more information and then limit the answer in his base of knowledge.
Well, it was kind of a long question too. So, but you're specifically asking him.
Your Honor, I'll rephrase my questions a little bit because it was multiple questions. You asked, and we heard the testimony, you asked retired Sergeant Hendrick to locate James and Jennifer Crumbley on December 2nd of 2021.
That's correct.
That was on the date that there were discussions about potentially charging James and Jennifer Crumbley.
That's correct.
On December 3rd of 2021, they had not been located at that time, earlier in the day.
What time?
Before dark.
No, they weren't located.
They were
To my
located.
knowledge, they weren't located.
Right. To your knowledge, they were located later in the day, and we heard the testimony about that information, correct?
Yes.
You testified about a video, I believe you said it was posted on Twitter, of the shooter, a Molotov cocktail or something?
I believe it was a YouTube video.
Okay. You have no information that James was aware of that video?
No.
Now, Exhibit 16 is a photograph of the backpack and contents in the bathroom that we looked at.
Okay.
The photo shows that the journal that was in the backpack was open, and I believe you testified that that was opened by law enforcement.
To be honest, I'm not. So, if I can recap that, the Michigan State Police bomb squad went in there. They arranged the items, to my understanding, and that's how. The first time I saw that, that's how it was.
Okay. So you don't have any specific knowledge about how that was opened or who opened it. You just know that when you saw the contents, that's how they were as they were in the photograph.
Right.
You identified the journal as that of the shooter because his name was in it.
Yes. Among other things.
Right. You said also the writing matched homework that you saw and things of that nature. The first date that you have written in the journal you testified was November 9th of 2021.
I believe that's right.
Okay. You indicated that there were references to incidents prior to November 9th of 2021, but you don't specifically know what the dates were that those incidents were written about. Is that fair?
I think I might.
Based on reading the journal?
Based on everything I've read.
Okay. So based on everything you have about, all the knowledge you have about the case that you learned after November 30th of 2021, you may have additional information.
Yes.
But looking at the journal, you can't tell from the dates. There aren't dates other than November 9th of 2021, and I think there might be a couple other ones referencing the shooting.
You're correct.
Okay. You testified that the journal appears to be written from back to front. So opening the front cover, there would be no writing, but if you flip to the back, then it's the 22 pages from the back forward that have writing on them.
It seems that way, yes.
And again, I think this is an obvious question, but I'm going to ask you. You have no indication that James Crumbley was aware that that journal existed, correct?
No, I think I know he knew it existed.
That journal existed?
Yeah, he mentioned it in his counseling session that why don't you write, you can write in your journal.
Right, and we heard from the counselor and we heard from the dean of students, who both testified that there was a mention of a journal, but that there were no specifics given. It doesn't say the journal in your backpack, the one you always keep with you. He didn't provide colors. He didn't provide any descriptive detail. We saw in the search warrant photos that were taken that there were additional notebooks and, could be journals in the shooter's bedroom. He references a journal. The school counselor and the dean of students mentioned a journal, testified about a journal. They indicated that James Crumbley said, you have a journal. But there's no specifics given about what that journal is. Is that fair?
That was a long question.
It was a very long question.
Can,
Yes. There were no specifics given during that meeting at the school about whether James had any knowledge of what the journal looked like, if he knew what was in it, or anything like that.
no.
Specifically pages 15 and 22 that we have that were admitted as Exhibit 359. On page 15, if you recall, the shooter is writing about wanting a 9mm and then he's mad because he wants to get it because that's what he wants for the school shooting, correct?
Can we put it?
Yes. In fact, I can hand this to you because I don't have it electronically. May I approach, Your Honor?
Sure.
Thank you. It's flipped open to page 15.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I'm sorry, what was your question, Counselor?
Page 15.
Okay.
There's some mention about the shooter wanting a 9mm gun. He wants it for the school shooting. And he's mad that he hasn't gotten it yet.
I'm not. Yes.
Okay.
He's pissed.
Pissed is the word he used, correct? Page 15 also includes this statement. He mentions the Caltech and says he has to find where his dad hid it.
Yes, that's what it says.
If you'd like to. Yes. I'm going to go to page 22 next, Mr. Keast. Mr. Keast is going to put them on the screen for you.
Thank you.
You have to turn this one on.
May I approach, Your Honor? Thank you, Mr. Keast. So that's the page 15 that you just looked at, correct? The portion that I asked you to look at and review.
Yes.
Page 22. If you could go to page 22, Mr. Keast, thank you.
There's a few 22.
Page 22, the binding.
Which exhibit number is this?
359, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Page 22, and again, we discussed that this was written along the binding, so along the inside edge of the page, correct, in the journal?
Yes.
And it says, I will have to find where my dad hid my 9mm before I can shoot the school, correct?
That is what it says.
Now, we know based on the testimony that you've heard, and you've been sitting in court during the trial, we know that there was a 9mm handgun purchased on November 26th of 2021.
Yes.
That
correct.
the shooting at the high school occurred on November 30th of 2021. That the shooter and his mom went to the shooting range on November 27th of 2021. So this portion would have been written at some point between November 27th of 2021 and arguably the morning of November 30th of 2021.
Well, now you've confused me. I don't.
Well, we know that there was no 9mm handgun in the house until November 26th of 2021, correct? Based on your investigation.
I see the 9mm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because this specifically references a 9mm.
It does.
This is different than the other on page 15, which specifically references the Caltech.
I got you.
So, although Mr. Crumbley's son says my 9mm, we know that there was a 9mm purchase on November 26th of 2021.
Yes.
That he went to the shooting range on November 27th of
Yes.
2021, and the shooting occurred on November 30th of 2021.
Yes.
So we know, and this page was page 22, which would have been the back cover of the journal. Is that fair? If you recall?
I don't.
If you don't, it's okay. But we can read this and know that it would have been written after definitely November 26th of 2021.
Yes.
On page 3 of the journal, Mr. Keast, if you want to move to page 3, thank you. It's the access. Yes. If you look at the third line of this entry, it says, I have access to the gun and the ammo. Do you see that?
I do see it.
Now, you don't recall seeing anything in this journal or even around this entry that says, my dad told me where the gun and ammo are. Correct?
Can you repeat that, please?
Yes. You don't recall reading anything in the journal that says, my dad told me where the gun and ammo are.
I do not.
You don't remember reading anything in the journal, you didn't see anything in the journal that says, my dad showed me where the gun and ammo are.
No, I didn't read that.
So when it says, I have access, you don't know how he obtained access. Is that fair? It just says, I have access. Exactly what the words are.
Can you repeat that? I'm sorry.
Yes. Reading this journal entry and the information that you have that you've read in the journal, this doesn't say how Mr. Crumbley's son had access to the firearm. Is that fair?
That's right. Just simply that he had access.
Simply that he had access.
Understood.
Thank you. I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Redirect.
Briefly, thank you, Judge. Starting off with the journal here. You were asked if James Crumbley knew it existed, and you indicated that you believe that the answer was that. Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so you were here for Mr. Hopkins' testimony as well as Mr. Ejak's testimony. Of course, you're the officer in charge of the investigation. In that meeting with James Crumbley, did he say journals, plural, or journal as in singular?
Just a singular journal.
Okay. And there were notebooks found in the home, 112 East Knox. We saw a picture of that. But were there any other journals found?
There were not.
Okay. And you indicated that you believe that you can tell approximately when the journal entries were written based upon the content?
Yes.
Okay, so I guess we didn't really go over it in direct examination, but there was an incident on November the 4th, 2021 at Oxford High School. Was that referenced in the journal?
It was.
And an incident that occurred November the 11th, 2021. Was that referenced?
Yes.
Did the shooter reference his friend who left the state October 31st?
He did.
Okay. Was there any indication anywhere in the journal that the 9mm was locked up?
No.
Now, we saw evidence in this case that the shooter obtained access to the Kel-Tec pistol as well.
Yes.
Okay, and that text message was, look what my dad left out.
Correct.
Okay. And what we have on the screen here, page 3, first off, I got my gun. It's an SP2022 6-hour 9mm. Second, the shooting is tomorrow. We know, of course, the shooting occurred November the 30th, 2021. So can you presume a date on this passage? So this would be November the 21st, presumably?
Presumably.
Okay. Second, shooting is tomorrow. I have access to the gun and ammo. And of course, we know that he did obtain that weapon.
We do.
Okay. And we know that the murder weapon from November the 30th was the weapon purchased by James Crumbley on November the 26th, 2021.
Absolutely.
I have nothing further.
Brief request, or brief question?
Okay.
Very brief. And I don't mean to belabor the issue, but when it comes to journals or notebooks, you don't know what James calls a notebook, what he calls a journal. You have no idea. Is that fair?
That's not fair.
Okay.
I do know what he calls a journal because he called it a journal in the meeting with Mr. Hopkins.
Right. He said something about a journal.
He did.
You don't know if he's talking about a notebook. You don't know if he's talking about a journal, like a diary with a lock on it. You have no idea what he's talking about.
I got a pretty good idea he's talking about a journal. That's what I can say.
Right. A journal.
A journal.
The reference to the Kel-Tec that Mr. Keast just asked you about was in August of 2021, correct? He asked about the video that we saw, the text that Mr. Crumbley's son sent to his friend about my dad left it out, LOL, or something along those lines.
Yeah.
That was in August of 21.
Can you show me?
If you recall.
I don't recall.
Okay. You don't recall seeing anything from November of 21 in the journal or otherwise saying that Mr. Crumbley's son had access because Mr. Crumbley left a gun out in November of 21 or in the journal, correct?
Ask that again, please.
Sure. You don't recall seeing anything during your investigation from November of 21 that Mr. Crumbley had allegedly left a firearm out in the house and his son talked about it.
This is beyond the scope of my redirection.
I still don't understand the question.
Sure, Your Honor. Mr. Keast asked about the text that was sent from Mr. Crumbley's son to his friend about his dad allegedly leaving the Kel-Tec out.
Okay.
And he filmed a video of himself.
Okay.
I'm trying to clarify that that video was in August of 21. I mean, if I need to, I'll pull up the exhibit, but I was just trying to clarify with the detective lieutenant.
Okay, I think if you showed him the exhibit, he'd be able to say, but you stipulate that that was from August of 21?
Are we talking about the Kel-Tec?
Yes.
Sorry, yes. August 18th, 21, and August 20. I'm sorry.
August 19th.
I did it again. August 19th of 21 and August 20th of 21.
Okay, I can tell you what exhibit it is.
Your Honor, they stipulated to the date, so I don't need to ask again.
Okay.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right.
I just, based on that, there was evidence that we introduced in this case that the shooter filmed a video of himself holding the 6 Sauer 9mm handgun November 26, 2021.
Yes.
Okay. And there were also Instagram posts of him holding that same firearm on the 27th of the month.
That is correct.
Okay. And I think I misspoke earlier. I said November 21st as far as this passage being written. This would actually be November the 29th of 2021.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. I'm sorry about that. Thank you, Judge.
All right, can he be excused?
Yes, Judge.
All right, you can step down and you're excused.
Thank you, Judge.
Tell me where we're headed.
Judge, we have no further witnesses today. Before we officially rest, I'd like the opportunity to review our exhibit list. We had a lot of modifications throughout the case.
All right.
I want to confirm with defense counsel what was extracted and added on. And then tomorrow morning we'll know for sure.
All right, do you want 9 o'clock?
That's fine, Your Honor. Yes.
9 o'clock. All right. I'm going to ask you to return at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. Please know again that during the trial you should not read, listen to, or watch any news reports about the case. Under the law, the evidence you consider to decide the case must meet certain standards. For example, witnesses must swear to tell the truth, and lawyers must be able to cross-examine them. Because news reports do not have to meet these standards, they could give you incorrect or misleading information that might unfairly favor one side. So to be fair to both sides, you must follow this instructions. Do not go on social media, do not post, do not do research, do not discuss the case with anyone. We really appreciate your commitment to this very important job. And we ask you to hang with us just a few more days. We're nearing closings within the week, I would think. Remember to fill out your lunch form for tomorrow. Stay healthy tonight, and don't discuss the case with anyone. Any questions about the schedule? Any questions about that? No. We appreciate you. Thank you.
All rise for the jury.
Please be seated and remain seated until the defendant is removed from the courtroom. 9 o'clock tomorrow, right?
Thank you,
Yes,
Judge.
Your Honor. Thank you.
More courtroom coverage in the trial of James Crumbley from the Hidden Killers podcast from True Crime Today is coming up. Press subscribe now so you don't miss a minute.